BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Welcome one, welcome all to the Scottish Football Podcast. In case you missed it on Friday,
McGinn shoots and scores!
Scotland have given themselves a late lifeline in the Nations League by beating Croatia at Hampden, so all eyes will be on Warsaw, where Steve Clarke's side play Poland.
Lewandowski just shifting it forward, oh, it's gone in! Szymanski, I think it was, picks it up and smacks it in off the right-hand post!
Can Scotland make it 2 wins in 4 days after waiting a year for a competitive victory? And what kind of challenge will Poland present?
They've had their own problems, so I think Scotland will definitely be needing to go there on the front foot, be positive, get at them, press high and see what they're made of.
I say Scotland have given themselves a lifeline. We might need to get our calculators out after full time.
So beating Poland gets us to 7 points, which would be level with Croatia. Croatia, of course, would have to lose at home to Portugal. And if that does happen, we're then going into the tiebreakers to see who comes out on top.
Yes, we'll discuss all the permutations and find out what the implication of tonight's result with Poland could mean on our World Cup qualifying campaign.
The Scottish Football Podcast.
I'm your host, Andrew Petrie, and I'm delighted to be joined by current St Johnstone left-back Barry Douglas and one-time rampaging midfielder turned pen pusher, the Athletic's Jordan Campbell. Gentlemen, firstly, I've got a real conundrum that I need you to fix. I'm supposed to play sevens at 8 o'clock on Monday night, 15 minutes after kick-off, 24 hours in advance. I'm down to play. What should I do? Do I bail on the game with my mates, let them down last minute to watch Scotland, or do I play the game, turn the phone off, come back and watch it all on YouTube? What do you think?
Well, I've seen you play, so I'd probably bail and do your friends a favour, I'd say, Andy. But no, I think you should patch the football and do your job and cheer on Scotland to victory. Another victory, 2 in a row.
Yeah, what do you think, Barry?
Depends what you want from it. If you need to get some rust off, go and have a game of football. But yeah, if you want to hopefully cheer the boys on and hopefully they get a result, then it'd be better to be watching it live, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be. It's a hard one. Thanks for the advice. I'll certainly take it on board. Maybe Barry's word more than Jordan's. Right, plenty more to discuss with both, and we'll also be hearing from Gavin Noon, aka Scotland's coefficient on social media. Before all that, though, let's run through the latest headlines. Inter Milan's Piotr Zielinski says the atmosphere is good in the Poland dressing room despite a 5-1 loss to Portugal. In the SWPL, a stunning strike from returning midfielder Chelsea Cornet gave Rangers a 3-2 victory in the Old Firm over Celtic. However, Glasgow City remained top after winning 6-1 at Queen's Park, while Hearts lost ground in the title chase after losing a late goal in the Edinburgh Derby, with Hibs winning 1-0. In the men's game, Tete Yengi's goal was enough to earn Livingston a 1-0 win over Championship leaders Falkirk. That reduces the gap between the sides to just 3 points. Elsewhere, Ayr United remain third after a 3-2 win over Queen's Park at Somerset, while Airdrie are now 7 points adrift at the foot of the table, losing 1-0 at Dunfermline.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Right, let's get into the Scotland game now. The final match of Group 1 in Nations League A for Scotland, away to Poland. Barry, I'll start with yourself. What's the mood among Scotland fans going into this one after the win over Croatia? And what did you make of the performance from Scotland?
Listen, football is about getting results, isn't it? So you're only as good as your last game, and it was a win. I think fans need to kind of be optimistic on that. Obviously, the squad has done well in recent years, and I think that's raised the expectation levels, and when it doesn't quite align with reality, it can be difficult. But we'll see. I think going into the Poland game, they'll definitely be confident. I mean, as will Poland see it as a game that they can win also, but they've got nothing to lose really, so they basically just need to go there and be in the front foot and try and get a result, and then see what else happens.
And I realise I've not done my kind of Scotland fan credentials any favours in the build-up. I was at the game on Friday, and Jordan, it was a bit of a strange one because against Poland and against Portugal, I thought Scotland actually played a lot better for larger periods than they did in the win against Croatia. What did you think?
Yeah, and I guess that's football, isn't it? Like, Scotland can play well at times for the last year, but because it was 14 months without a meaningful win, if you discount the Gibraltar win, that dictates the mood. So, I think it was getting a win so late on, I think felt really, really important. Probably a lot of relief for the players as well, and Steve Clarke himself, because obviously he's been under a lot of pressure. But I think fans have actually, bought into the fact that they are now embarking on what is a transition in terms of how they're playing, 4 at the back, trying to play out a bit more. I think the first 15 minutes, people could see that this is very new to a lot of the team, giving the ball away in their own third, getting countered quite a lot. But, there's things that I think you could see they had been working on, McLean and Gilmore dropping into full-back position, Suter, driving out and playing through to midfield, Christie coming in for the wings, switching the play to Doak. I think these are small things that before you were asking yourself, what is the pattern of a Scotland team? What did they play like? Could we actually recognise it? So I think you can see that clearly there's going to be teething issues with it, but if you're going to compete at the top, then you need to be able to expose yourself to these tests and put yourself in positions where you might be 3v3 or 4v3, but that's the only way you're going to learn. And, for the players who aren't playing at the very top level, I think you're seeing John Souttar really come into his own in a Scotland jersey. Even Anthony Ralston, still questions over whether enough on the ball, but I think even defensively looks a lot more assured. And we've seen that happen with Steve O'Donnell as well, is, the more that people get experience there, the more they get accustomed to it. But no, I thought there was some positives, even though, as you said, they didn't probably play as neat a football as they have in other games where they've ended up losing. But the strength of the bench, I think, is the big positive. Gold coming on and setting up the big chance within his first touch, as he did in the away game against Croatia. McGinn coming off the bench, you've still got Tierney injured, McKenna came on at half time. So I'm not saying that Scotland have bundles and bundles of talent all of a sudden, but there are options, and I think Clark's got to be brave and give Gold and these guys enough time to actually change games.
And we'll come on to those potential changes that Steve Clarke could make. The one real positive that Scotland definitely had, Barry, was the performance of Ben Doak. Now, as a left back yourself, how would you have liked to have gone up against him on Friday night? How do you stop a player when he's playing that well?
It's difficult. It's difficult, especially when he's so direct and positive every time he gets the ball on it. And I like that wingers or forward players nowadays, like if it doesn't happen from 1 or 2 times, he can revert to the kind of easy pass, simple pass. But he kept going, which was nice to see, and he's got that belief. And I mean, he's had a world-class player on toast, didn't he? So he's exciting. He's the kind of player that gets people off the edges of the seat, and that's, I think, exactly what the fans will be looking for. Someone that's going to be a bit creative and be direct and enjoy watching the game of football again.
And obviously it's a must-win game for Scotland, but we saw Steve Clarke's tactics in a must-win game against Hungary over the summer, and I know it annoyed plenty of people. Jordan, do you expect him to make changes to this Scotland team, or do you expect him to kind of go with what worked on Friday?
I mean, I think we've probably become accustomed now that I don't think there's going to be 5-6 changes to a Steve Clarke team when it is a must-win, as you say, but I don't think there is as much riding on it. Obviously, it would be great to keep our Nations League A status because I think just the experience, again, getting that consistent exposure to the top level is the only way that you'll get better. You mentioned the Hungary game. How do you get better on the ball up against better opposition unless you're tested against it? So I think it would be great for Scotland to stay in it, but I'm hopeful that he's learned lessons from the Euros and he doesn't, go there and shy away, because I think you're seeing Scotland really press teams now. And all right, sometimes it does leave them with holes in places, but I think you can see there is an idea now. And I think if you keep consistently doing it with the consistent players, we've seen how that can propel a team forward when they switch to the three at the back before we're wing back. So I think it's just a bit of adjustment again. But you look at the team and you think, could Devlin maybe come in at right back, or McKenna get a start next to Souttar, maybe a bit more pace, a bit better on the ball. Maybe is Gold done enough now to maybe, come in for Christie off the left, and I wouldn't surprise. I don't think anyone would be surprised if Dykes gets a nod, because we all know how much Clarke sort of hangs his hat on him at times. But the one is obviously Doak, and I know Clarke got asked about whether it's too much too soon to play him again, but I think you've just got to let the boy play. He's playing regularly for Middlesbrough. I don't think there's any conditioning problems there. He doesn't look tired or fatigued. He looks like an athlete of a boy. So I would be just letting him do what he was doing the other day.
The one name you didn't mention there was John McGinn, of course, who came on and scored the winner. Barry, would you expect to see a player who's been so key for Steve Clarke come back in, or did the players that started on Friday night kind of put in such a shift that it'll be hard for McGinn to get back in?
Yes, I mean, at the end of the day, this is why the manager's the manager, because he's got these decisions to make. Sean's obviously staked his claim with Scone, but you know what you get with some as well. So if he was to get the nod, I don't think there'd be any question marks over what he's playing, because he's a fantastic player and he's consistently shown that over the years for Scotland and for his club. I think it's just depends how they're going to play, how they're going to set up will determine who plays and which positions they want to exploit, because everyone's got their own different attributes. So that will be the interesting thing.
Certainly will be. And obviously, Barry, you're in a quite unique position that you've played professional football in Poland for quite a long time as well. So what are you expecting from them, and what can the Scotland side expect from the Polish national team?
To be honest, I think they're probably quite similar to Scotland in a transitional period, kind of try to find their DNA as such and their philosophy of playing. I know they've not had the new manager so long. So, I mean, they've got loads of youth. They've also got some top players, but again, it's international football. Every game is different, and they've had their own problems. So I think Scotland will definitely be needing to go there on the front foot, be positive, get at them, like you said, press high and see what they're made of, because they like to try and play as well. They've got players who play with the ball, and if you can exploit them, make mistakes, then it's better to be up that end of the park than sitting back defending, isn't it?
And the good mood at Hampden was made even better, I think, when fans found out that Portugal had beaten Poland 5-1. Obviously, that helps us in the table. But Barry, as a professional yourself, how does a dressing room react to getting beaten 5-1? Is that a good thing for Scotland? Will Poland be hurting, or will they be kind of out for revenge?
Yeah, it can be one of two ways. Of course, the boys will be looking for a bit of a reaction, and normally off a big defeat like that, they find them extra percents going into the next game. So, of course, they need to be cautious and prepare properly and have that in the back of their mind that they will be looking for a reaction. So, I don't think they've got any room to be complacent. At the end of the day, it's a game of football that they can definitely go and win. So, I think it's just how they're going to set up, how their game plan will be, and then take it from there, get the creative players on the ball and let them play and express themselves. You only get a few opportunities in these games. You don't play week in, week out. So I don't think there'll be much time for regret.
And there was kind of a bit of a stir on social media over the weekend. It was Peter Zielinski and Nikola Zalewski got their photo taken with Cristiano Ronaldo after the game, after he'd beaten them 5-1, scored a couple of goals in that game. Barry, if that was one of your teammates, what would you be saying to them? Would you be happy with that, or do you think it's a bit of a storm in the teacup?
It's hard. Football's changed now, isn't it? And I think 10, 15, 20 years ago, you didn't get away with that because of pride and character. But at the end of the day, they're only human. They've played against an icon in football. Yeah, there's maybe a time and a place to do it, but you also don't get a lot of these opportunities either. So maybe more subtly. And also, again, it's maybe just been blown way out of proportion because of the spotlight on it. It's a picture at the end of the day. So, yeah, I wouldn't really look too much into it. I wouldn't, if it was my teammate, I'd maybe just ask them for a wee bit more subtlety when doing it. But it's normal. It's normal.
Jordan, just going back to that Scotland team selection briefly, obviously we saw Tommy Conway make his first start on Friday night. We've talked about McGinn, but up front, I think that connection between Conway and Doak, we saw it in little sparks. We saw it in the first half, and I think that was kind of Scotland's only chance when Scott McTominay had a shot saved, and it came from the connection between Conway and Doak. Do you think that's strong enough to kind of make a case for Tommy Conway to start, or do you expect Lyndon Dykes, who's kind of been a hero for Steve Clarke so many times, to come back in?
I mean, personally, I'd probably like Conway to be given a couple of starts in a row, because I think it's difficult to really find your feet at international level unless you're given that sort of consistent minutes. But yeah, there was a chance in the second half as well where Doak got in behind, and you could see Conway already knew what was in his mind, and was just in perfect position at the back post. So I think the two of them did look threatening, and I would be, I'd be hesitant to really break that up. It's the same, I think, if you get any combinations at club level, the same with McTominay and Gilmore. If you can try and get those guys close together on the pitch, then you're hoping that sort of understanding will translate, even though it's a different surroundings, different way of playing. So yeah, I would like to see that that retained. But yeah, I think the fact they forgot McGinn probably shows the fact that, Scotland are slightly changing now, and there's maybe, there's one more position in an attacking sense, but maybe that playing that more possession style, does McGinn give you enough? Well, not does he give you enough, but compared to somebody like Christie, as he is guaranteed a first man on the page, on the team sheet as he's been for the last 3 years, because he's been Scotland's best player with McTominay for 3 years now. So I think the fact that where does he fit into this new system, because McTominay seems to be the guy playing off the striker, so then you're going to have to play him sort of off the left, but he's not. He is our best transition player and can get you up the pitch, but where does he fit in terms of possession? So I guess that's the dilemma for Clark. But again, it's nice to have these different dilemmas and combinations and try and see what works. And that's what these Nation Leagues games, that they're competitive, but it is a chance to actually try different things and try and create a new formula, or 2-3 formulas that you can mix and match each game.
And do you think McGinn now, similar to McTominay, is viewed more as a forward player rather than coming in for, say, Kenny McLean? Because I know Kenny McLean comes in for criticism often from Scotland fans. I thought he was absolutely brilliant against Portugal. I didn't think he had his best game against Croatia. Could John McGinn play there?
I don't think Steve Clarke will play him there. I think fairly on in his tenure, you've seen that he really wanted to release him. McTominay had to move about for a lot longer, but I think you almost saw McGinn become a second striker overnight under Clarke. So I think he sees him still as like the guy who is great at picking up second balls and getting the team up the pitch. I don't think that'll change, and you want as many goal scorers on the pitch as possible, and he proved that he's Scotland's best goal scorer along with McTominay the other night. So I still think he'll play. Maybe it will be more a 4-3-2-1 at some point, and he puts him and McTominay behind the striker. But to me, that the role Kenny McLean's playing, I think he does get a lot of harsh criticism. It's the same with other players who have played that role. Gives the ball away sometimes, but he's brave and he wants to get back on it. And I think it's way overblown his limitations. But I think that role probably, as soon as Lewis Ferguson is back, that's probably the time where I think he's now been in enough squads and he's got enough caps off the bench that it's his time to then be put in alongside Gilmour. And I think that is an exciting proposition when you look at the age profile of those guys, with McTominay and McGinn now in their peak years, they're at late 20s. I think there is a really good mix still. So yeah, I think Ferguson's maybe the next one to come in there alongside Gilmour to rejuvenate that midfield area.
Well, we'll have to wait and see what Steve Clarke does. After 3 defeats in the opening 3 matches of the group, you might not have thought it possible, but incredibly, Scotland still have a chance of finishing second, and where they end up could have significant implications on World Cup qualifying. To find out more about the possible permutations, I've been catching up with Gavin Noon, owner of Scotland's Coefficient page on social media. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Gavin. As ever, Scotland never do it the easy way. We're the only team in Europe that could still be in any one of 3 pots for World Cup qualifying draws, I believe. Is this expected for you now? How long have you been doing this? And is this, just kind of par for the course with Scotland?
Yeah, to be honest, it is expected now with Scotland. We tend to not do things the easy way, although in the last campaign we won the first 5 matches, which pretty much got us there, which you could argue was the easy way. Form obviously dropped off since then. So yeah, the way the group started, where we kept losing late goals or having a last-minute goal disallowed, and we had such a poor start, means that we find ourselves in this situation with a lot of work to do, but with loads of positive outcomes available, which is good.
And I know it's been a while that we've had the Nations League now. A few folk probably still can't get their head around it. Sometimes I find it quite confusing, to be honest. So what is the importance of a good result for Scotland and Poland?
Yeah, well, not everybody had their head around it, first of all, and then they changed it this year. So they introduced the quarter-final stage. So it used to just be 4 teams went to the semis and then compete for the trophy, which Spain won last time. But now there's a quarter-final, so 8 teams go through. So for Scotland, let's start off. A draw is no good. So we're bottom of the table, 4th place, tied with Poland. But because they beat us at Hampden, their head-to-head record would be better than us. So a draw keeps us bottom. We would be automatically relegated to League B. If we beat Poland, then as a minimum, we'll finish above Poland in 3rd place. 3rd place gives you a relegation playoff against a team that finished 2nd in League B. So we might not get relegated. We would have a playoff in March to see that. However, the biggest prize on offer is if we can come 2nd. So beating Poland gets us to 7 points, which would be level with Croatia. Croatia, of course, would have to lose at home to Portugal. And if that does happen, we're then going into the tiebreakers to see who comes out on top. And with that, like I said earlier, you advance to the quarterfinals, but arguably more important, you're guaranteed to be pot one in the World Cup qualifying draw, which is next month. And that would be such an advantage for us going into the next campaign.
So what are some of these tiebreakers that you mentioned? Kind of how mad could it get? Might we have to play Croatia again and go to a penalty shootout? Or is it going to be like a toss of the coin? What's going to happen?
Well, playing them again or penalties would probably be more fun, but unfortunately it's just going to be much more mathematical than that. So if you're tied on points, which we would be if we beat Poland and Croatia lose at home to Portugal, it's head-to-head. Obviously, our head-to-head record with Croatia is exactly equal. They beat us by 1 goal, we beat them by 1 goal. So the next tiebreaker is goal difference. So to overcome the goal difference, we need a 3-goal swing, which essentially means either of the results that go our way need to be decided by more than a goal. So for example, we win by 2, Croatia lose by 1, that's a 3-goal swing. So we would then go above them. Conversely, we only win by 1 and Croatia lose by 2. That would again be a 3-goal swing, enough for us to be second. That's not the only route to second place, though. If both results are by the same margin, so by a goal, and we win by a goal, Croatia lose by a goal, we would be tied on goal difference. The next tiebreaker is goals scored. So we then move down onto that. Croatia are currently above us by 2. So if we can score 2 more goals than them, we then would be level with them on that tiebreaker. So, for example, we win 2-1 and Croatia lose 1-0. Croatia haven't scored and we've scored 2. So our goals for then jumps up by 2 and we cut that one out. The last tiebreaker then would be the number of away wins. Fortunately, Croatia haven't won away from home in this campaign, and we would, in theory, if we win on Monday night, that would be away from home, and so we would finish second place. So to sort of summarise that, we need to win, we need Croatia to lose, we need one of the results to be by 2 goals, but if it's not, we could still get through if both results were by a goal, but it's with us scoring 2 more goals than them.
And this might throw you under the bus a bit here, but what's like the final tiebreaker? What could be like the tiny little thing that decides it?
So because of the away wins thing where we have to be above them if we win, we physically couldn't be tied. But if we were, it would then go on to disciplinary and we would win on that anyway, because Croatia have had a lot more yellow cards and a red card that they got the other night at Hampden. So after that, it's disciplinary points we would have won anyway. And then the last one is just who's the higher ranked team. So if we're level on everything, level on yellow cards, then goes to the ranking, and Croatia would unfortunately be above us. But on Monday night, it physically can't go to that. The last one it will go to is number of away wins. If number of away goals doesn't sort it, or goals for, or goals difference, that's where it would end.
Well, yeah, thank God for that it doesn't come down to the world rankings. That's great news for Steve Clarke, I'm sure. Some kind of crumb of comfort for him. Well, Gavin, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for explaining that. I think I've got my head around that. Thank you very much.
No, thanks for having me.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Gavin Noon, aka Scotland's Coefficient there. So just before we go, Barry, you've of course recently signed for St Johnstone. How are you enjoying life at McDermott Park?
Yeah, I'm still getting settled in. Obviously, it's a bit of a transition period for the club. New managers come in, so it's new for me also. But it's exciting. Of course, it makes it a lot easier when you're winning football matches, and that's yet to still come. But it's an exciting project, and it's probably the most important reason why I decided to go there was the footballing project, the room for improvement and to help try and change the culture a little bit, help on and off the park, and that was the big draw for me.
And of course, it's been, I think, over 10 years since you last played in Scotland. Your career has taken you all over Europe. How do you look back on those experiences, and especially your time in Poland as well?
Yeah, very grateful for the opportunities that I had in my career. I think I don't really reflect on it enough because I'm lucky enough to still be in the game. But yeah, when I look back at moments, I've been fortunate enough to have it in abundance. Had a great career till date, and hopefully there's still another positive chapter left. But yeah, especially in Poland as well. I won 2 championships, won Super Cup, played in many big games, European runs. So it's something that I'll always be able to look back on fond memories and go back and visit these places.
Well, that's all we've got time for. Many thanks to Barry Douglas, Jordan Campbell and Gavin Noon, and thank you for listening. Remember, you may not be able to see the game on a linear broadcaster, but you can, of course, hear full live commentary of Poland against Scotland on BBC Radio Scotland this evening with Sportsound on air from 6. Extensive coverage and live updates on the BBC Sports Scotland website as well. Of course, make sure you don't miss an episode of the Scottish Football Podcast. Just subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on your phone.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.